Hey there, welcome to episode 99 of the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program. I'm your host, Dan Hugo. We are recording this at just about 12:30 in the afternoon on the 17th of January, 2025. That's Friday. Happy Friday. Today's episode, New Year, New Ways. Let's see what that's going to be. A little editorial commentary, I think. That's what I predict. That's what I've written down here. The Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program, for those of you new to this one. The name, Cafe Genius, and then the audio program, Cafe Genius Impresarios. The name is inspired by a Cafe Centro in San Francisco, the place where startups start, unfortunately no longer in business. It's where Twitter got its start, for better or worse. It was a nice, quaint little cafe in South Park, very near the baseball park in San Francisco. I had been there many times. It was a cool place. It was a cute little startup bastion. It's a place where every place should have a Cafe Centro to gather and discuss ideas and kick off adventures. The Genius Lunch, infamous? Nah. A few people knew about it, but the Genius Lunch during the downtown project days here in the greater Vegas area, it was a time to gather up a couple of people, kind of a, hey, we're having lunch if you want to go, blah, blah, blah. It was not a formal event, but it was just to get together to see who's working on what, how are things going, what's going on. Kind of like gossip, but a little bit more meaningful. And then impresarios, of course, are the people that make things happen here in our entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem, which is basically the topic of this whole entire audio program. Mostly here in Vegas, but could apply to elsewhere. And of course, learning from elsewhere is always a good idea. And so we have the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program. We used to have guests. We will again. I'll kind of touch on that here, in fact. So, hopefully wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes. Today, the show notes contain the usual summary, which I will read to you, and then the links for today's episode are the shameless pair, the shameless pair of self-promotional links. And again, this will be largely editorial, so there's really no other links to refer to at this time. We'll keep it simple, hopefully. And so, the sooner we begin, the sooner we end and get started on the weekend. And if you're entrepreneurial like me, that just means more working like normal. Unless you're taking some time for yourself, and we'll touch on that as well. Let us begin. The new year is properly settled. The world is about to change. That's a reference to the inauguration. CES has come and gone once again, and now it is time to refocus and proceed with Initiative 2025, which we covered 2 weeks ago, closer to the actual new year commencing. Far less Dilly, essentially no Dally. We are getting serious, and so should you. Of course, my voice cracks just as I'm trying to be funny without being funny. Dilly Dally, you know what I mean. The links, as always, the host links, that's an homage to guests if we ever do have them again. The buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo link, the ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/DanHugo link. No obligation to spend money on either of these platforms. You are welcome to. Any proceeds do go towards the purchase of coffee. The Dan Hugo profile on buymeacoffee.com, in fact, lists a couple of my favorite coffee beans. So those are some examples. As well, a freeform link tree, links to my various audio programs, links to some GitHub project organizations, I guess you could say. And a little bit about me at the top there. And then way at the top of the profile page on buymeacoffee.com, a link to the posts section, because buymeacoffee.com allows for posting audio and video. So I think we're on week 9 come Monday, or episode 9. Every Monday morning, I try to post a under 5-minute micro update that covers the week previous as far as audio programs and then whatever's coming up during the week. I very rarely write these shows ahead of time, like days or weeks. It's usually day before, 2 days before, maybe day of. I ponder it. I'm pondering ideas all the time. but I usually don't write it so it's fresh and the latest. So, but yeah, look for that Monday mornings linked exclusively on buymeacoffee.com. Buy me an update. And then Ko-fi.com does not allow quite that flexibility, so that's usually where I'll place a text update here and there about certain things. So check them out, follow if you like. Both platforms are aimed at enabling support for content creators, open source project developers, and so on. So I've been using them for quite a long time. No riches have been generated here. That's not the purpose. It's really just for engagement. So you can find me, and that's where I'll leave that. Moving on to the show. Again, the sooner we start, the sooner we begin our weekend. And again, this is editorial. So this is just some things that will be a part of, because Initiative 2025, if you have not heard that episode, that's 2 episodes back. The goal is to implement some of the things that have been topics of discussion, monologue discussion, on this very audio program, some ideas that were discussed during the Genius Roundtable a year and a half ago. The next Genius Roundtable, which will be made up of real entrepreneurs, but across different focal areas, real innovators that are doing different things, avoiding the people in the startup scene, but that's what we'll get to today. And then last week, the second stories, that's where I talked about the need for a second startup scene, among other things, hence the second stories. So yeah, let's begin. Waiting is not what entrepreneurs do. The Greater Vegas entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem is a special thing. At times, I would wager, figuratively, of course, no betting needed. We're already, just being here is kind of a wager, I think. We're all, by the way, I'm interrupting myself. People don't always look at it this way, but I do. If you are in a region, wherever you live, wherever you are trying to do your work, or whatever, however you want to look at that, you are an investor in that area. You are a part of it. You're a part of the neighborhood. You're a part of the city. You're a part of its various small C communities. You are possibly contributing in some way. If you are entrepreneurial, you are putting yourself at risk to be a part of the local economy. If you are in Greater Vegas and you are not in the 82% of small businesses that have no employees, maybe you'll be employing some people. So you are investing yourself, probably some money, certainly your time, maybe some of your sanity, in the place where you are. You may be doing it virtually too, so that counts. But the bottom line is I think people discount that, and I think that is incorrect. So we're all kind of betting on our surroundings when we embark on an entrepreneurial innovation adventure. And we're kind of hoping the ecosystem is there when we need it. So I would wager, figuratively, that were we to build an AI model of our ecosystem here, if that were actually practically doable, I mean, we could probably do it. I don't know. It would be really meaningful. But if we could create an AI model of our ecosystem as it is today and ask it if it has any idea what it is doing, it would begin hallucinating immediately. Waiting around for coherence, for some sort of a sense of some sort of sense to be made, is something of a waste. And I have learned in my decade here in Vegas, and I've actually been here for 11 years, but I will give that first year to plain old naive newbieism. What could I possibly know? For example, I thought people would respond to emails. I will say that urgency is something for someone else to have if they need something from you or me, and rarely, if ever, the other way around. So if they need something, they're gonna reach out, they're gonna call, they're gonna contact. But Vegas culture is all about ghosting. Generally speaking, if you need something from someone else here, with few exceptions for doctors and emergency rooms perhaps, you better be prepared to go it alone or work it out for yourself. That's the name of the game, ghosting. And that happens to be the heading of the next section. Of course, I'm speaking of ghosting, or as I've come to refer to it, the ghost protocol. If you have responded to someone in Vegas regarding some issue of theirs, some question or concern they posed, and you believe the conversation will continue to some logical end, you may be in for an unhappy surprise. Insular silos and intense solipsism, coupled with mostly transactional Who writes this stuff? Mostly transactional interactions. Okay. Make for some interesting, often disappointing engagements, even amongst people in the so-called startup scene. Oh, here we're getting into it already. It is best to assume that anyone claiming to be entrepreneurial is too busy to respond anyway. You should take the same stance. Assume any in-person conversations that are not focused on prospect development. Are you their client? Are you their next client? Are you a potential client? If not, well, that's a transaction. You may not get another one. You may assume that anything that's not focused on prospect development are for entertainment purposes only. In other words, people have a goal when you are in conversations in various meetups and so on. And I'm not talking about people that go to have meetups about book clubs or foodies or socializing, meeting people of similar age or casual singles or whatever that's a different thing. But when you go to an event is it a networking event? Okay, you can toss those right out. Everybody's looking for clients. And then if you go to something in the startup scene, it's kind of the same thing. And anything that's not explicitly, hey, are you looking for services? Can I contact you about some project work that I could do for you? If it's not that, it's essentially entertainment. You're just there checking it out. And so are they. When in Rome, as the saying goes, is the best way to approach this. Time spent waiting on others is time not spent advancing your own cause. Here's my proposal to you. Ignore others until you can show rather than tell until you can show about your leave the about out. Show rather than tell your entrepreneurial endeavor or your endeavor story or innovation solution, better yet a combination of the two, so entrepreneurial innovation for the win, and leave others in a position where they want, even need to speak with you. Casual conversation at meetups, I got to tell you, not always productive. And by that, I mean never productive. So if there is ghosting to be done, you should be driving. You do the ghosting. Don't be ghosted. Thus, we no longer, and me, maybe you, no longer wait on others. For the coding crowd, no more spinning, no more deadlocks. We are moving forward. People who don't respond don't deserve your time. Don't give it to them in the first place. And if you're in Vegas, the odds are, unfortunately, that's where they point. The second scene, I referred to this in the second story episode last week. So it concerns second stories, which are usually the what version of what happened rather than the who did something wrong version of what happened. Famously, part of the 3 Mile Island sort of retrospective, the finger pointing, the who is the first story. The second story is what really happened? What systemic failures? What could we have done differently before this happened? What can we learn from this? So the second story is important. Also, second stories are, if we treat the startup scene in the greater Vegas area as the first story on the ground floor, the second story is metaphorically one level up. If there is a need for the first startup scene, then there is certainly a need for a second startup scene. We just covered ghosting. The second startup scene is made up of people actually working on some sort of a startup. They're not talking about it. They're not sitting in a room wondering where their money is. They are not listening to presentations and asking silly questions. And then, of course, getting free food. That's why they're there. And then doing some trolling for clients. People who may or may not be located in Vegas. They may be here sometimes. They may be remote. They may be working with others who are here. Who knows? But who have some greater Vegas affiliation. And how? Wow, who types this stuff? And who do not, so these are the people that would be in the second startup scene, who do not subscribe to the ghost protocol mentality. There's a difference between being super busy and simply disregarding human communication because you feel like it or because you have no need. I got what I need. I don't need to continue talking. There are a few exceptions to the ghost first rule just discussed. These are people in the second startup scene, and they are given the benefit of the doubt because, again, they may just be so busy pursuing their startup adventure. again, I have to focus. People in the second startup scene are working on startups. They are not talking about it. They're not aspirational. It's not a nascent idea. This is actually happening. In that mode, it is legitimate to maybe drop an email or something. You know how you tell the difference? Well, first of all, people in the second startup scene are busy. They're legitimately, they can drop a response, like I just said, but they also don't go to events for free food and don't check off a box claiming to be in the startup scene without doing anything. They're too busy for that too, working on their startup. I cannot emphasize that enough. These people will apologize for not getting back to you sooner. You may have to ping, hey, did you get my email? Oh man, I'm really sorry I dropped that. Or for missing a message entirely. I don't even know. I didn't see it. I don't know. Sorry about that. I saw it. I was going to respond. It could be anything, but this is actually true because you, as a fellow startup entrepreneurial innovator, you have the same problem sometimes. Oh, I meant to get back to that. I'm really sorry. Those are honest situations, and you're being honest about them. When you simply disappear and the person follows up with you and you still don't respond, you're not in the second startup scene. They will apologize for not getting back to you sooner, for missing the entire message, and they'll go on to complete their end of the part of the discussion. They will respond because that is actually important. Yes, it got away from them. The time is not always our friend, but they don't drop everything and forget about you. They respond. And then the conversation may continue. It's simply that it might be protracted. Again, everybody's busy in the second startup scene. So these are things that we all understand. We accept them, but we do not ghost each other. These are serious people. So are you. The second startup scene is all about show, don't tell. Just like they say about movies. The narrator is not to be taken seriously. Leave that for the normal startup scene. If you want somebody to tell you what they're thinking or doing, or what they're, I'm not sure where to begin, or this and that, bah. You've got better things to do. And you'll answer their question and they'll disappear. So don't even bother. If you are familiar with Agile, discussions with people in the second startup scene are telling you think they finished. Wait. Get out of sync here. If you're familiar with Agile, I should have said Agile stand-up meetings that are not for everyone. Discussions with people in the second startup scene are telling you think they finished things. That's why. Who writes this? I'm telling you, I'm firing that person. They're telling you, are you still with me? They're telling you things that they finished, things they are working on next, and how they are going to pulverize whatever might be slowing them down. Once again, these are serious people. So to get everybody back on the track here, if you've ever been in an Agile stand-up meeting, the point is to not hang out and have some snacks and talk about random things and what you hope to do someday and socializing. You're in and you're out. Here's where we are. Here's a demo. Maybe if in that context you're able to show something really quickly. Here's what we're working on next. Here's version 1.1 coming out. Whatever. These are because you're moving. You're describing things that have happened that you're checking off real boxes. Like our most. I don't like minimally viable products, but your MVP is ready, or your services are launched. Yeah, whatever it is, you're indicating progress, not aspiration. Aspirations for the startup scene, not the second startup scene. That's kind of like Agile, or sometimes Scrum. Stand-up meetings. It's serious. It's not wasting time. It's so that people that are interested in what you're doing, possible collaboration, maybe some opportunity to connect people outside of the second startup scene that would be meaningful. That's how you kind of understand what's happening. Second scene. Real meetups, by the way, these are important. On the off chance that those in the second startup scene get together, either in person or remotely, these will be the purpose-driven gatherings that you actually want to go to. All day meetups is for people with for people. All day is for people with nothing better to do. People who arrange ahead of time to spend all day with nothing better to do are not entrepreneurs. So if you know that next month you're going to be going to another all-day meeting, running into the same people, having the same conversations for the sake of having free food and sitting in classroom settings, believing that this is somehow advancing your cause, Just stick with that. If you're an entrepreneur, you got to deal with what you're dealing with. You got to those stand-up meetings I just described. Those are not all day. Those are 10 to 15 minutes if you have them at all. That's conversations with people in the second startup scene are purpose-driven, and they move. Seconds, they're based on attendance at between 6 and 10 minutes per person. So if you got 10 people, that's about an hour of catching up and syncing up and seeing if there's opportunity. If there's 10 people, probably the maximum number, 10 to 12 people. You don't want to go beyond that. You can have meetups with your second startup scene colleagues here and there as needed, as time permits. They can be virtual. You can meet with a group of 10, and you can meet with a different group of 10, or intermingly. But you should not be spending 6-8 hours hanging out. That's entrepreneur time, unless it's a special occasion. But those are rare. Is there some need for some detail, lengthier exchanges, more interaction, one-on-one meetings over coffee or keyboards, like virtual, or email exchanges where the replies can actually take place asynchronously? There's no real need for, answer me immediately. You can do that in person. Maybe a more nuanced question or issue will need a 1-on-2 or 1-on-3 approach, maybe a mini meetup. But and still, you can still treat it as 6 to 10 minutes per person, and you just got 2 or 3 or 4 people, and then you're back to work, back to doing your thing. But so we need to take up the time of all for the sake of one. You don't need to have a 10 or 15 people, 10, 12, if you just have something you want to talk to 2 people about. Save it for that. Here's an idea. Private forums, like news groups or a private discussion, not quite Discord, but something like that. Maybe a mailing list. Pardon me. Here, so private forums of some sort. Post a question, an answer might come from sometime sooner, sometime later, from 1 or 2 people in the second startup scene when they can get to it. So you're basically have a private conversation. Mailing list is probably the best because it probably is. But some sort of, even if you have like Google Groups or something similar, if you have a Slack or Discord, those tend to be wastelands eventually. And the other nice thing about mailing lists is you kind of know who's reading them. You know who's on the mailing list at any given time. If you're using proper mailing lists, if you're just copying people, that's also possible. But whatever works in the part of the second startup scene in which you find yourself. People in the second startup scene value mental health and the value of resting, recharging, and reflecting. It is possible that this might happen between members of the second startup scene. So you may agree that, oh, you know what, this is a good time to take a break. But in the interest of truly resting and recharging, getting away from the scene is almost certainly a better advice. So you can rest and recharge in the second startup scene, maybe a movie night or something. But really getting away from all this and doing your thing, family gathering or going fishing. That always worked for Edison, although he was not a good guy. Getting away from the scene is almost certainly better advice, and that's always true of everything. Fresh perspective on life by going away from your daily grind. Return for the reflecting, perhaps, but best believe the value of taking a break from pursuing your endeavors. It will become apparent soon after returning to the grind that was good. It was good to get away. It was good even to go see a movie by yourself or with friends or with people in the second startup scene. But that is a version of a meetup. The time you spend in a meetup should be valuable. The time you spend getting away from what you're doing should also be valuable. Hey, hopefully this is making sense at this point, what I'm trying to say here. Do not talk about second startup scene. That's a whole Fight Club reference. You may think it's a good idea to get up in front of some people in the startup scene or spectators in the startup scene and demonstrate your startup in whatever state it might be in to get some feedback. I used to think that. This probably sounds like a great idea, but people in the startup scene are tire kickers, some large percentage, large fraction. You might get a reasonable question. You'll probably get some stinkers like, why are you doing this? On the surface, that's a valuable question, but not in that context. In that context, it's a throwaway question. So you might get a reasonable question, but you probably get some stinkers. And when all is said and done, you and your demo will be forgotten in an hour's time. So in the next hour, on to other things. Oh yeah, didn't you do that demo about the thing? You gave me a really good answer about why you're doing it, but I don't remember it. Spend that time working. Demonstrating for the startup scene crowd is almost worse than demonstrating to a group of friends or colleagues or just people off the street. If you were to do a little focus group, that's almost more valuable. Again, the people in the startup scene are there for free food. People in the second startup scene are most likely to, or for clients, transactional gatherings, come to my meetup and let me pitch you on some ideas. Here's my business card, call me. People in the second startup scene are more likely to ask good questions because they're actually also doing startup. They're actually doing it. Provide good feedback. They'll give you kind of the devil's advocate view. Have you thought about what happens when someone who doesn't like that thing has to do, whatever it is? And remember your progress between last time and this time. They may actually remember what you talked about last time because they're interested. They're interested in advancing the cause that they are pursuing, and they see potential learning from listening to those in the second startup scene, like yourself. Spend effort on those in the second startup scene if you're going to spend time at all in these sorts of demonstrations. So if you're going to show off your work, first of all, make that the focus of a meetup, not an all-day affair. Demonstrate or have a demonstration available for people to check out when they can. This is probably the easiest for software, websites where, oh, here's a login. You can get through the firewall, the keep out. This is not ready for prime time, and you can actually check out the product or the service, whatever it is. The best time to talk about what you're working on is when you have something ready enough to ship or launch. It's nice in your sync up meetings, your 6 to 10 minutes. You can drop some hints about things, about progress and so on. But if you're going to talk about something, it should be something you can say, here it is. And by the way, if you've ever been to a hackathon, you know that after 2 days, you can actually you can hold something up. It might be ugly. Maybe it's not ready to ship, but it does something. You've defined the service that you're working on. You have the workflow. You have the supply chains needed. You have the connections that you're going to connect as part of your server, whatever it is. You should be able to say, here it is. Do you want to try it out? Maybe it's a beta, but or maybe you got to make a hard pivot. So you're going to show something and say, this is what I think is wrong with this, and your crowd may agree. Your close second startup scene colleagues may say, you know what, I think you're right. Or if you're going to pivot anyway, what about this other idea? If you really need to base on practical feedback at this time, the pivot is a good time to ask. And again, if you've been having high quality, brief, highly focused meetups, maybe up to a dozen people, 1-on-1, 1-on-2, 1-on-3, micro meetups, focused, like, maybe it's almost like a buddy system. That might be interesting. Especially if you're working on like completely different ideas, because you won't be stuck in your own head about something similar, like, oh yeah, I have the same exact problem. But if you have conversations with people who are working on something completely different, but they understand the grind, they understand the startup path, they may have a completely different perspective. They may have a normal person perspective. Oh, I haven't been spending every waking moment thinking about this, so therefore I have the casual observer view, and I will share it with you. So those are quality discussions and connections to maintain in the second startup scene. If you feel you want to share your work with the unwashed masses at the startup scene, the normal one, time this well and demonstrate real ready functionality. Show, don't tell. Tell no one of the second startup scene, even in this scenario. Just don't talk about it. People who know, they will know. Bottom-up thinking. We already said entrepreneurs do not wait. Well, if you are thinking that Startup NV or LVGEA or a city or some staffer, like a city economic development department or something, or some staffer or some other agency who will wave some hands and come up with how to turn Greater Vegas into the next Silicon Valley, we need only look at Formula One and where, as one example, and where the focus was there. If you are already wealthy or have some celebrity, you can skip this entire section. But for the rest of us, remember that you need to look out for you, the powers that be, like fast cars and screwing over small business and tourists, for that matter. If you're not here for the car show, forget about those trees, forget about the pedestrian experience and small businesses. Sorry, we're redirecting your foot traffic and we're going to block your business. It's almost comical, but it's also sad, and it is an indication that people in power, I was going to say powerful positions, but in positions to affect these other groups like us in the second startup scene, competent? I don't know. The second startup scene is invite only. It is not for everybody. We are people of action. We are not messing around. We are not hanging out chatting about silliness. We know what's up. We know what isn't up. And if we are able to, we will collaborate to find a path through obstruction. Knock down hurdles now and then. Not always, but when we can. And generally behave like those on high are high. We have work to do, and we are doing it. Not talking about it and not waiting for someone else to give us the okay. That is apparent in the startup scene. It's I'm working on this startup. It's been 25 years. I'm almost ready to start. Okay, well, when you get started, when you have a demo that you can show rather than describing it, come back, maybe. Let's be honest. Most people in the hierarchy, especially here in the greater Vegas area, are not actively pursuing entrepreneurial endeavors. They are not eligible to participate in the second startup scene. If they aren't entrepreneurs, if they are not working on some form of innovation, maybe they fancy themselves an inventor, but either way, you're either entrepreneurial, you're proactively working on some form of innovation, ideally both. If they are employed by government agencies, they probably don't have a real concept of life closer to the ground, where we in the second startup scene are making things happen. Ironically, one floor above the startup scene, which is actually on the ground. We'll have to figure that metaphor out. And now it is time to get back to work. Pardon me. I've already talked for about 30 minutes. 30 minutes that could have gone towards startup work. This entire audio program series is about real entrepreneurs, no impresarios. They might be too busy to participate in any meaningful way in the second startup scene. They may be in it, but not really there for it, if that makes sense. This is fine, though participation in the startup scene may make this assessment moot. It takes all kinds. Maybe, though, there is something to share with the startup scene in these 100 various episodes to date. But really, I've been talking to the second startup scene. For the most part, people in the startup scene are not ready to consider things like, should I ghost people? No. No, you should not. If you are a solopreneur, and here in Vegas you probably are, for at least some of the time, you know that taking time to create audio program content for others is either insanity in MP3 form or part of some ulterior motive. So you may presume the latter, in my case, if you will. Now the weekend is at hand, and zero presence of the greater Vegas startup scene at Eureka Park at CES 2025. I can only say that the gap between hype and reality needs to close a bit. Those in the second startup scene could be a part of that, not by telling, but by showing, which means doing, which means thanks for listening.